whoever is able to nail that, something like cars or houses or these things that are very bureaucratic and take a lot of time to transact in, I think that's like the real opportunity here for that technology and really for governments as well. And in a time when things are so uncertain about the global economy, like if I was government, like that's where I want to be focusing on right now.
What is the value proposition of NFTs beyond being able to sell, like a spinning logo up front? What really is the value pitch here for the long term?
As it stands, NFTs have been used as a medium for art and collectibles. They're branching out into like the metaverse and gaming, all that kind of stuff. But I think those things will take a very long time to build. And I think mass adoption of this metaverse concept will take a lot longer than we think it will. Something that I think is more important is the efficiency in which it speeds up processes. So if we take art as an example, let's say you go to Sotheby's and you bid on a piece, they don't ask you for the money up front. When the auction is done, that you don't have to pay them. If you don't pay them, then there's this issue. How does the artist get paid? And then if that piece resells, like how does the artist get their royalty? Is there a royalty? Like it's all like inefficient, right? It's all very confusing. And with NFT technology, it's like, cool, when you bid something, you bid on chain to the capital at that moment in time. And you can write into the smart contracts royalties every time it resells and all that kind of stuff. So for me, like the reason why I'm so bullish on it as a technology, and it's important to distinguish that being bullish on me being bullish on NFTs as a technology does not necessarily equate to I'm bullish on all these NFTs that exist right now. I think they're two different things. But it's something, it speeds up efficiency and processes so much. Like imagine, like think about buying a car, right? When you buy a car, you don't know like the service history of the car. When you buy it and you have ownership of it, you have to like fill out this form, send it to the government, and they send it back to you. And it's like, it's so much hassle, right? But if your car was represented, it was an NFT that represented the physical item. When you bought it, that transaction could be on chain. It's like, okay, we know this person bought it at this date on a public blockchain. When you like service, instead of having a physical logbook, it can be like, here's the service history of this car on chain. And when you sell it and transact, you do the transaction on chain, and it's just like a few second transaction, and it's recognizable by everyone. And that's the sort of thing I'm really bullish on. I think that's the real value prop, like applying this technology to real life processes that are so inefficient right now, and things that you and I and everyone probably get frustrated at. And you just think, wow, like if this was just like on chain or an NFT or whatever, like the idea of digital ownership, I think can extend to representing physical ownership and having information on a public ledger, which is actually transparent, that everyone can see, that's public. And I think that's the real value prop. And it's a big task, but whoever is able to nail that, something like cars or houses or these things that are very bureaucratic and take a lot of time to transact in, I think that's like the real opportunity here for that technology and really for governments as well. And in a time when things are so uncertain about the global economy, like if I was government, like that's where I want to be focusing on right now. If I don't have tools to lower interest rates, but I need to, use some kind of fiscal policy or policy to boost productivity, like that's where I'd be focusing on right now.
What a contrast, right? Like your previous life is you're trading distressed credit, loans take 30 to 45 days to settle, sourcing the paper takes forever. Like I hear my wife's frustration sometimes when she's having calls and now you go from that to this like almost instantaneous world. And obviously people are like, well, it takes 5 minutes for a transaction to settle, but it's still much faster from the experiences that we saw. I was in equities. It still took at least 2 days. Structured products took like 5 days, 7 days. And it's just super interesting how I think people that have that background see this new technology. And I was a skeptic too for the longest time, by the way. But once you study it, you're like, oh my God, wait a minute. Like this is huge beyond just the pixels and the JPEGs and the ape cartoons. It's always kind of like shocked me. Every morning I wake up, I'm like, wow, it sounds funny, but we can change the world in a way. Touching again on your Wall Street experience, you mentioned at the beginning that, you drew a lot of parallels between trading distressed credit to trading NFTs early on. Could you expand a little bit on that?
Distress and high yield credit, it's an over-the-counter market. So you can't just go to an exchange like you can with your ETH or with any equity or foreign exchange where you go like, okay, I want to sell it, you get a price, you sell it. You actually have to find a buyer for it. Or if you want to buy something, you actually have to find the other side of the trade. It's over the counter. And a lot of the time we were, making phone calls to clients, trying to figure out where people cared to buy or sell things. That was the nature of that market. And the other thing about it was that it was extremely volatile. Like we were trading companies' credits that would, could go to zero in the space of a day or a couple of days if it turned out they didn't have any cash left or whatever. Or the exact opposite could happen. Something very cheap could rally a lot very aggressively, and the price moves would be very volatile. They would just gap. There would be like, I don't know, like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% moves, but just like gapping moves with no liquidity in between, and just crazy price action. So it was a volatile market that was illiquid, and I think that's the best way to describe the NFT market. Like, it's a volatile market that's illiquid. Sometimes I'm actually amazed by how liquid the NFT market is, but the concepts are the same. It's like if you want, and this is something I think most newbies misunderstand, because people talk about floor prices. Oh, the floor price is a 10 ETH. I can just sell it to 10 ETH whenever I want. It's like, no, that's not the case, because that's just one side of the market. That's the ask price, as we would call it. That's the price that you can actually buy at, not the price you can sell at. And that's a basic concept of market making or understanding, like bid offer, that you obviously get very familiar with in traditional finance, that I think people were not so familiar with NFTs, and or maybe some people fell over on. But yeah, it was almost like the same thing. You're looking for the same things, but the advantage for this was two advantages for this. Number one, you went from trading a market where people have been doing it for literally decades and everyone's very good at their jobs, to doing a market where most people in the market aren't from a traditional finance background and it's all very new to them. So you kind of have an edge or an advantage. And the second thing was, because it's all on chain, all the data is public. So when we used to trade high order distress, like you would try and put together data points, you would see prices, but you wouldn't know the buy interest and the sell interest, all these kinds of things that you get in the equity market, for example. But you had all this data in the NFT market, so it was just kind of like this amazing opportunity. And trading NFTs in 2021 was the most unreal opportunity, because it was kind of like a mix of the credit and equity markets, where you had all the data and information, but it traded like the credit market. So you had the margin of a credit market, and it was like those two things combined. And that's what I thought was just like the most amazing thing. And I just, instead of sitting there on Bloomberg, chat somebody like, you're on Discord chatting to someone, and you're like on OpenSea listing it. It was like, honestly, I always felt like I was sending out price runs and stuff. It was kind of funny, but it really, really felt the same. It really felt like the same thing, but instead of trading bonds, I was trading pictures of monkeys, basically. So
it's incredible, huh? And so you felt like you had an edge over the other market participants, given your experience.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's changed now. There's a lot of tools, but in 2021, I felt like I had an edge. Yeah, I really did. Like, I felt like people were slow to price things in, people were slow to react, and I think people didn't read data. There were no tools or analytics then, and that's part of the market that's changed a lot. Now there's like dozens of analytical platforms, and humans are smart. Like the best traders, and a lot of people aren't from TradFi backgrounds in this industry, and they're very smart, and they've cracked it, because I think trading is something that probably comes from more of like an instinctual thing necessarily, rather than like a training thing, but it's also an experience thing as well. But I don't really feel like I have much of an edge now in trading NFTs, because it's just become so advanced and you really have to sit there and be in the weeds. But at the beginning it did feel like that for sure.
It always struck me as interesting on the trading floors, where like some of the best traders were like English majors or music majors, really definitely not the finance or accounting majors. Okay, so your partner Armando, you mentioned him before. You guys built a large collection. You were able to get ape exposure again after selling your 150 apes for like an ETH each, before watching them go to like 120 ETH. Now you guys have a fund. You both have traditional finance backgrounds. How big has collaboration seems to be a big part of the space. What has your experience been? Obviously, he's a good friend of yours, but you also have other people in your circle that you collaborate a lot with. In a world where, it seems like, crypto, you always hear like single names and just like one or two people. You seem to have found a lot of success in also partner up with the right kind of people. And Web3, obviously, a big part of it is enabling collaboration across borders and decentralized and everything like that. Can you speak to your experience in that regards?
Yeah, it's made the biggest difference, I think. And if I was doing this by myself, no chance, whatever. And it's tough as well because you get volatile price action, you get days like today or weeks like last week, and you need to speak to people about it. And doing it by yourself, I think is very tough.
Hey visionaries, thank you for tuning in. For more free crypto content like this, head over to realvision.com/crypto. You'll get early access to the most brilliant minds in the space to cut through the noise, get in-depth analysis, and get you ahead of the curve with unbiased insights.